The warning ignored the sky above Earth. Was calm, but something had changed deep below. The surface where silence no longer meant peace, and peace no longer meant safety. Years had passed since the last war ended and humans had started to rebuild their broken colonies across space. But even during the silence they stayed ready, as if waiting for something they could not see yet. The heart of the United Earth Command, an old message repeated again and again, like a fading echo across the stars, warning. The alien forces, with a voice clear and firm, saying, "This is Earth's final warning, keep attacking, and we go full savage." Many had heard it, but most had laughed, thinking humans were weak, too emotional, too soft for real war. They believed Earth's kindness was fear, and Earth's patience was weakness. But they were wrong. A fleet from the Draven Empire moved across the edge of Earth's colonies, without care or caution, burning trade posts, destroying peaceful settlements, and leaving nothing behind except ash and silence. The attack came fast and without mercy. The outer colonies of Mars 12 and Vega Outpost fell within hours. There were no survivors, no calls for surrender, only a clear message carved into wreckage by alien hands saying, "Humans do not belong here inside Earth's High Command." The Council watched the reports come in each screen, showing destruction and loss, each word heavier than the last, yet no one spoke in panic. The man leading the meeting had gray in his hair and a scar over his right eye. He stood still as the room around him buzzed with whispers and data streams. His name was General Adam. No titles, no ranks, just a man who had seen too much and buried too many. He raised his hand and the room went quiet. Then he turned toward the silent row of chairs behind the glass wall and gave a simple nod. Far beneath Earth, in a place not marked on any map, a signal was sent through cold black cables that had not been touched in over 20 years. The message was short and clear: activate protocol breaker. The breakers were not part of any official army. They were not known to the public. They were not listed in records. They had been trained in secret, built from pain, discipline, and loyalty, kept away from war unless Earth truly had no other choice. And now that time had come. In Avion, deep space, a lone cruiser from the Volrek species was passing near the Vega system. When it picked up a strange signal, it slowed down to investigate, curious about the source. What it found was not a signal, but a fleet. No flags, no warning, no messages, only ships shaped like silent knives, moving without sound or heat, their black armor reflecting nothing, their weapons still cold. The cruiser tried to turn away, but it was already too late. The breaker fleet moved as one, every cannon fired at once. Every strike hit its mark within less than a minute. The Volrek cruiser was gone, turned to dust, not because it was a threat, but because it had seen too much back on Earth. The footage returned not from official sources, but from hidden channels, underground networks, and silent satellites. Images of the destroyed alien fleet spread across human communication lines. Whispers began to rise, questions followed them, a feeling that had not been felt in a long time. Pride. The message was not spoken. It did not need to be. Humans were done pretending they were soft or scared. They had given their warning, and now the galaxy would learn what Earth truly was. Some alien leaders panicked, others gathered for secret meetings. A few believed it was a trick, that Earth was bluffing, but those who had studied humans knew better. They remembered old wars, old losses, old stories about a species that only wanted peace until peace was taken from them. One leader from the Varnik people spoke to his council with shaking hands, saying, "They have released the ones we were never supposed to see, the ones who were trained not to protect peace, but to destroy threats before they reach home." But even then the Galactic Union refused to act. They thought Earth could be controlled through talks or pressure or fear. They believed the other species would stand together against one small planet. They forgot the one thing that made humans different. They do not break when pushed. They become something else, something stronger, something colder, something that remembers every wound, every word, every betrayal. General Adam stood once again before the council, but this time the room was silent. With respect, not fear, he looked at the reports of destroyed colonies and dead civilians, then turned to the map showing breaker movements across the stars. Said in a calm voice, This was your choice, you brought this upon yourselves. No one argued. No one dared outside Earth's orbit. The fleets continued their silent path. No music, no banners, no cheers, only quiet fire and metal, and the steady march of justice shaped in human form. The galaxy was changing, and Earth was no longer asking for peace. They were done talking, and this was only the beginning. The chains break. The stars above were still the same, but the feeling across space had changed. Something heavy had awakened, and no one could deny it anymore. The humans had warned the galaxy, and now they had answered through action, not words. Breaker Fleet 1 moved like a silent storm through Sector 9. Its ships were dark and smooth, without lights or sound, only purpose. No decoration, no signals, only movement and fire when needed. On a mining moon once used by the Draven Empire, the ground shook as breaker boots touched the surface. Not one human spoke, not one showed emotion. They moved through the empty structures, finding weapon stores, hidden tunnels, and Draven soldiers hiding. In fear, the commander of the base tried to talk, offering surrender, but the breakers did not reply. They simply scanned the area, marked the targets, and removed the threat with speed and precision. The commander did not survive. The warning had been clear, and the time for mercy had passed. In another part of the galaxy, a small alien ship watched the destruction from afar, trying to record and escape. What they saw made their blood run cold. Breakers moving as if they shared one mind, soldiers without hesitation, ships firing in perfect rhythm, and no survivors left behind. Footage was leaked across black market networks, reaching planets that had never even seen a human. Many laughed, nervously saying it was fake. No one believed humans could become such monsters, until more fleets vanished, until more colonies were turned to ash, until the silence became too loud to ignore. On Planet Kalen, a council of leaders met to discuss Earth's actions. One speaker said humans have lost control. They must be stopped. Another said no, they warned us, we mocked them, now we face the price. The debate ended when a signal arrived from Earth. Not a message, but a transmission, showing the face of a breaker standing in the ruins of a Draven stronghold. Behind him, fire and smoke rose into the black sky. He did not speak, only looked into the camera with eyes that held no hate, no joy, just cold truth. Then the screen went dark. Earth was not seeking approval. Earth was not asking for understanding. They were simply doing what they said they would do. In the hidden moon of Argo 9, a rebel group from the species called Track had gathered. They had once fought against Earth. Now they begged for a chance to join them, not out of love, but out of fear and respect. They brought stolen data, proof that the Galactic Union had long planned to erase Earth and split its resources among the major empires. Truth spread like wildfire, and many who once stood against Earth began to question their alliances. They had seen Earth as the enemy. Now they saw it as the only power willing to strike back without delay, without talk, without compromise. General Adam met with the rebel leader in a cold room without flags or banners. The rebel leader asked for forgiveness. General Adam said, "This is not about forgiveness. This is about balance. You do not need to love us, but if you stand against us again, you will be the next to burn." The breakers received new orders, not to conquer, not to rule, but to remove all threats. That ignored Earth's final warning. They did not cheer. They did not question. They simply moved to the next target, a station orbiting the gas giant. Xeron had once fired on a refugee ship escaping the Mars 12 colony. Now it sat quiet in the dark, thinking the war would not reach them. But it did. The breakers arrived without signal, and within minutes the station was gone. Nothing left. No escape pods, no messages, only dust where pride once lived. In the halls of the Galactic Union, panic grew. Old alliances broke, trust turned to fear, and meetings turned to shouting. Leaders who once boasted about crushing Earth now argued over who would be next. One commander from the Xin species said, "Earth was once soft, but we pushed too far. They gave us every chance, and we answered with blood. Now they show us who they really are, and we are not ready." Earth's fleets continued without rest. Each system crossed became a line that others dared not pass. Planets with no history of aggression were left untouched. Earth's wrath was focused, not random. It had purpose, and every action carried the same message: we are not your prey. Across the galaxy, children heard new stories, not of monsters from the deep, but of humans who waited too long to strike, and when they did, they became something unstoppable, not out of joy, but out of need. The breakers were not evil. They were the result of 1,000 broken promises, 1,000,000 ignored warnings, and a history of wars. Earth did not start, but always remembered. In a forgotten asteroid field, a Draven general tried to surrender, offering information and peace in exchange. For safety, the breaker unit arrived and listened for a moment, then scanned the general's past crimes. His record showed attacks on human colonies and the use of civilian shields. The answer was clear: the general did not leave the asteroid. Back on Earth, people watched the updates not with celebration, but with quiet understanding. Families who had lost loved ones to alien attacks now saw that Earth was not weak. Earth was patient, and that patience had ended. General Adams stood once more before his team, reading new reports and new requests from alien factions, hoping for peace, hoping to join Earth or at least avoid its wrath. He said, "We never wanted this, but they chose their path. We gave them every chance. Now we show them what happens when humans stop pretending to be kind." The breakers moved to the next sector. The stars ahead were full of old names and old threats. The mission was not over, not yet, but the message was clear: Earth had broken its chains not to enslave others, but to make sure it was never chained again, and the galaxy had just begun to understand what that meant. The burn began. Stars faded behind clouds of fire as Sector 12 lit up like a dying sun. Pieces of shattered cruisers floated in silence, and the airless void remembered every scream, even if the galaxy refused to break her. Unit 7 landed on the planet called Dravix 1, a world once proud, now burning from the edges inward. The soil had turned black, the skies were red, and the cities had no walls left standing. The attack was not without reason. It was revenge wrapped in justice. Years ago, this same planet had launched torpedoes into peaceful human stations, killing thousands during a trade summit. They had called it a warning. But Earth never answered then. Now they had, and the answer was not written in words, but in the ash that flew on the wind. The breakers did not take prisoners. They moved through the ruins with steel in their eyes and silence on their lips. Their only sound came from the boots against broken stone and the hum of their weapons, which never missed a target. Across space, news spread like wildfire. Each world received whispers of destruction, stories of how Earth moved without waiting, how they crushed without pausing, how they struck with the power of a people who had nothing left to lose and everything to protect. On the moon station of Elrond Prime, a group of diplomats gathered to vote on whether to label Earth a threat to galactic peace. But the vote failed. The room was too silent, the images on their screens too clear. The galaxy now understood. Earth was not seeking power, it was sending a message. Breakers entered the Charon Nebula, where hidden fleets of the enemy thought clouds would hide them. But Earth had eyes everywhere, and silence had never meant safety. Not for them, not anymore. Within minutes, the fleets vanished, swallowed by fire and speed and precision. A general from the Velra species tried to send a message to Earth, asking for mercy, but his signal arrived too late. His outpost had already been marked. It was the same one that had once fired at refugee ships fleeing the fall of Mars. 12. The breakers gave no answer, only action on Earth. The people did not cheer. They did not sing. They simply watched, knowing this was the price of survival. They had offered peace again and again. Now they offered nothing. They moved like the stars, cold, distant, and powerful. A small planet on the edge of the Kairos belt tried to resist sending ships against the breaker force, but resistance lasted only 12 minutes. After that, sky turned dark and the ground became quiet. The breakers did not stay. They moved on without taking anything. They came to punish, not to conquer. In the ruins of a destroyed city, an old woman from the Gar species crawled out from under stone. She looked up at the gray sky and whispered, "They gave us every chance. We laughed. Now we seeing a deep command center hidden below Earth's southern pole." General Adams stood before a display of systems. Each one marked with different colors, some showing silence, some showing fire. Each dot told a story, and each one had started with a choice. Someone made to test Earth's patience. He turned to the officers standing beside him and said they thought we forgot. They thought we moved on. But every human remembers, every name, every scream, every time peace was taken from USA. Young officer asked what happens when it ends. General Adam looked at the display again and said we stop only when the galaxy understands that Earth is not a name to mock, but a voice to respect. Meanwhile, on planet Jarek, a rebel leader, once allied with the Galactic Union, sent a message to Earth offering full support. He said, "We saw how they treated you. We believed their lies. Now we believe your silence more than we ever trusted their promises." Earth accepted the support, but made no promises in return. Alliances were no longer built on talk, but on action, and those who acted with Earth were allowed to stand. Those who hesitated were already too late. The breakers now reached the border of the galactic core, the last line of defense for the Union. The strongest fleets waited there, thinking they could finally stop the wave that had swallowed so much. But the breakers were not just soldiers. They were legends now moving with a force that came not from anger, but from resolve, from a deep memory of loss, and a promise made to the fallen that no more lives would be taken without cost. One breaker ship entered the enemy's defense zone, and the defenders launched every weapon they had, but none hit their mark. The breaker ship danced through fire like a shadow, and its return strike silenced an entire fleet. The remaining defenders hesitated for the first time in years. They wondered if fighting was worth the risk, if holding the line meant meeting the same fate as those behind them. In a secret chamber, the leaders of the Galactic Union argued louder than ever. One said, "Earth will never stop." Another said, "They warned us. We are the ones who refused peace." The oldest voice in the room said, "We forced them to become this. Now we must deal with the storm we built." The storm moved closer every day in. Human colonies that once cried for help now stood tall again, rebuilt stronger than before. Each wall carried names of the lost, and each home carried stories of those who had survived, not because they were strong, but because Earth had become what it needed to be for them. The new children born on Mars 10 and Jupiter's rings grew up, learning not only about war, but about dignity, patience, and the strength to hold the line until holding it meant nothing, and breaking it was the only path left. The galaxy now feared Earth, not because it was cruel, but because it had tried so hard not to be, and when that effort failed, the result was something no empire had ever seen: a fire that did not spread to consume, but to cleanse the wounds left too long ignored. And the fire burned still. Earth did not want conquest. Earth did not want a rule. Earth wanted one thing: respect, not through words, not through empty praise, but through understanding. And that understanding was now being written into every system, one by the hands of the breakers. The burn had begun, and no one could stop it. The enemy fractures. The heart of the Galactic Union once beat strong with the power of 100 worlds, but now that heart was shaking, torn by fear and divided by panic. The great chamber, once filled with pride, now echoed with silence as leaders watched their maps shrink line by line, system by system. Earth's fleets had reached the border of the core, where the oldest and strongest empires had built their walls for centuries. Behind those walls sat the ruling council, their eyes tired, their hands shaking, their minds lost between pride and survival. The name Earth was no longer spoken with laughter, it was now whispered with respect and fear. Across the galaxy, ships turned away at the first sight of a breaker squad. Colonies lowered their flags before Earth's fleets even entered orbit, not because they were weak, but because they understood the message in the orbit of planet Threx. A breaker dreadnought appeared without warning, its surface dark as space itself, its weapons cold and silent. Yet every ship in the region retreated within minutes. No commands, no fire, no loss of life, only presence. Inside the dreadnought was not a bridge full of shouting officers, but a calm command room where a single figure watched every star with eyes that never blinked. This was not a captain, but an AI created by humans, not to rule, but to remember every war, every betrayal, every Lesson from the past. It had no name, only a purpose: protect Earth by any means. And now that purpose had become action, it gave no speeches, it needed no glory. It simply carried out the will of a world that had already said its final words on planet Kirill. The Union military tried to rally what was left of their strength. Commanders held broken weapons. Plans were drawn with hands that trembled each time a signal arrived from the outer systems showing one more fleet gone, one more ally lost. Union's leaders tried to blame one another. Old secrets came to light, hidden deals. Betrayal within betrayal. Trust fell apart faster than any attack could have done. The galaxy was not falling because of Earth alone. It was collapsing because of the rot within its own walls. Earth did not ask for surrender. Earth did not need approval. Earth offered only a single path: stay out of our way or face what others already have in the broken sky above Ralos 5. The enemy gathered their last strong fleet, a mix of species and ships that once ruled trade routes and borders. They believed they still had the power to strike back. They believed they still had control. The breakers arrived not with hundreds of ships, but with a single formation designed not to destroy, but to show what silence truly meant. Each ship moved like a piece of one mind. They struck with clean force, without waste, without delay. The enemy tried to speak, but words were now too late. Planetary shields cracked within seconds. Command towers fell before the second wave. The fleet above split in panic. Some tried to run, others stayed and were erased. Only one ship survived, carrying the final message of defeat. Back to the core, back on Earth. The people did not cheer. There were no songs, no festivals, only quiet pride in knowing that their world no longer needed to shout to be heard. They had spoken through action, and now the galaxy listened. General Adam received the latest reports with steady hands, his face calm, but his voice colder than ever. He stood before his officers and said, they thought our silence was weakness. They thought our peace was fear. But now they know it was control, and that control is no longer holding back. In the halls of the Union's capital, final talks were held. Some begged for peace. Others demanded Earth's destruction. The oldest voices in the chamber reminded them all that this war began not with Earth, but with those who pushed it too far for too long. A secret vote was held. Many chose to flee rather than face what was coming. Some leaders disappeared from their own worlds, leaving their people to face the result of decisions made in comfort, far from the front lines. In deep space, Earth's allies grew not from diplomacy, but from action. Those who had once been ignored by the Union now turned to Earth, offering support not out of love, but from the belief that Earth stood for something real, something proven through fire and pain. One rebel commander from the lost planet Vexer sent a message across the stars, saying, we once feared you, now we follow, not because we must, but because you earned it. The breakers moved without delay, entering the last sector between Earth's power and the Union's core. They did not destroy everything they passed, only the ones who stood in the way, only the ones who refused to see what the galaxy now accepted. In the cold silence above the Union's final stronghold, the dreadnought waited. Its AI observed every movement, every signal, every fleet moving into place. Then it sent one final message to the chamber below: disband. Your forces surrender control or be erased. There was no response, only a long silence as pride and survival fought inside the minds of those who still believed they could control the storm they had created. When the countdown ended, the dreadnought fired once the sky turned white for a moment, and the last shield holding back the truth finally fell. The Union's heart had broken. And now the galaxy had no center, only fragments floating in fear. But Earth did not press further. The dreadnought turned its course back toward home. The breakers followed. Systems were marked as neutral territories, no longer under any control, but safe from Earth's wrath as long as they stayed clear. General Adam stood before his last meeting of the cycle. The war was ending, not with treaties, not with signatures, but with understanding written across burned skies and shattered pride. He said, we do not want thrones, we want peace, but the kind of peace that listens, the kind that remembers. The galaxy had changed. It was not ruled by force. It was shaped by respect, the kind earned when silence becomes the loudest voice, and when patience Runs out and Earth had become the voice no one could ignore, the savage peace the stars above no longer burned. With fire they now shined with silence, not the silence of fear, but of realization across the galaxy. Broken empires floated through the darkness. Without purpose, without voice, their leaders gone, their pride buried in the ashes of cities that once ruled from above Earth, did not celebrate. There were no banners, no dancing, no great words carved in stone. The people of Earth had seen too much, lost too much, and fought too hard to waste time on cheers. They rebuilt in quiet streets, planted in ruined soil, looked to the sky, and promised never again. The breaker fleets returned slowly, not as conquerors, not as victors, but as guardians, whose duty had been done. They passed through sectors that now stood empty of enemies, but full of memories there. Ships carried no gold, no prisoners, no spoils, only names of those who had fallen written in codes on the walls inside. In the chamber below Earth's surface, General Adams stood before the final report. The war log was complete. Every mission, every loss, every silent choice listed in cold detail. Behind him stood the officers who had never once questioned their orders, because they knew what was at stake. They knew silence had been a shield, and now it had become a sword. He turned toward them and said, "This is where it ends, not with more war, not with more fire, but with understanding. They pushed us until we stopped pretending. Now they understand we were never weak. We were just holding back across former enemy worlds. Ships flew carrying supplies, not weapons. Humans brought food, medicine, tools to rebuild, not because they owed anything, but because the cycle had to end somewhere. Someone had to stop the pattern of burn and repeat. And Earth chose to begin that stop on the distant planet of Thalos. A child of the Kelran species stood with her parents watching human engineers fix their broken water systems years ago. Their people had cheered when Earth was attacked. Now they offered help in silence, afraid to speak, afraid to be turned away, but no one was refused. Earth helped even those who had laughed at their pain. The message was clear: we do not forget, but we choose how to move forward. The Galactic Union no longer existed, its flags removed from every tower, its laws deleted from every system. Only fragments remained, small coalitions trying to find new direction. Some turned to Earth for guidance, others kept their distance, watching from far stars, wondering if peace was real or just the calm before another storm. But Earth made no demands. It did not build a new empire. It did not take control. It simply stood its ground and made sure no threat would rise again without warning. On Mars 10, a new memorial was built, not in stone or metal, but in light, a wall of names from every colony that had fallen, every life taken by the first attacks. Names of soldiers and farmers, teachers and children, all lit in soft glow, floating in the sky where everyone could see. Everyone could remember. People gathered in silence, standing together under the stars, not speaking, not moving, just remembering. This was not a place of sadness. It was a place of strength. It reminded them why Earth had unleashed the breakers. It reminded them why Earth must never be pushed again. In the deep control room, the breaker AI shut down its systems, not because it was finished forever, but because the mission had ended. Its presence no longer needed it, would wait now, silent, ready, only if Earth ever needed it again. General Adams sent a message to every remaining world across the stars. Not a threat, not a warning, only a single sentence: we are done fighting unless you begin again. Galaxy heard that message and knew it was not an offer, it was a truth. Some leaders who had once fought Earth stepped down, giving control to younger voices. Others disappeared into hidden corners of space, unwilling to face the new balance, but most stayed, changed by what they had seen, shaped by the force that Earth had become. The word savage no longer meant wild or cruel. It meant honest, powerful, clear. It meant acting when words were not enough. It meant protecting peace even if peace had to rise from fire on Earth. Children grew up learning the full story, not just victories, but the mistakes, the losses, the times when silence had failed them, and why it must never be ignored again. They were taught that kindness was not weakness, that peace was not surrender, and that if you ever had to fight, you fight so that you never have to again. And far away, in the quiet corners of space, old enemies, now allies, shared stories of Earth around their fires, they spoke of the day the silent planet roared, and the roar became law one. Alien Elder said they warned us, we laughed, then they stopped pretending. And now we all remember peace had returned, not because Earth had asked for it, but because Earth had earned it the hard way, the honest way. The way no one had seen coming, and now the stars carried that lesson forward with every passing ship, with every rebuilt home, with every child born in the time after Earth had given its final warning. And when that warning was ignored, it had spoken through flame and steel, and now no one dared to test them again. The war was over, the fear had passed, the silence had meaning again, not of weakness but of strength. And the galaxy moved forward under that silence, with Earth watching, not to rule, but to make sure no one ever forgot. The savage peace had begun, and this time it was real, the end.